So strap in for this one because the US Navy just yanked its crown jewel, the USS Gerald Ford, mostly just called the Ford, right out of its European hotspot, and they're steaming it towards the Caribbean. We're talking about a 100,000 ton beast of floating firepower. It was mid-mission in the Mediterranean Sea, and then suddenly it's been pivoted south, and this looks like a calculated high-stakes game against the cartel. But why even do this? Well, the push to dismantle narco trafficking throughout the Caribbean is in full steam, and this thing is headed towards the backyard of the United States. President Trump directed an intensified effort against the cartels over the last few days. This isn't a drill, this is a declaration, and to me, this just means force projection. When it comes to a supercarrier, this puts naval assets, specifically fixed-wing assets like F-35s, F-18s, and potentially even CCAs on the front lines. There's been multiple speedboat takedowns. I think we're up to about 10 at this point. And now the Ford's going to roll in with enough firepower to make the cartels feel like they're getting hit in the face by Muhammad Ali. So the Gerald R. Ford, that's the Navy's most advanced supercarrier. It was commissioned back in 2017, and now it is fully dialed in. Sailors sailed out from Norfolk last summer, and they were bound for the Eastern Mediterranean because obviously that's been a hot spot over the last few months as well. But this supercarrier has been running FA-18 Super Hornet operations, doing combat air patrols, as well as F-35 combat air patrols. This means routine flights every single day. I mean, routine in a way. Every single day that they take off from this carrier, they're putting themselves in a position to fly combat missions. And it's kind of been a steady rhythm. So electronic warfare teams like with the Growler, that F-18 that jams pretty much anything in sight. So much jamming potential with that thing. And also surveillance flights with the F-18 Growler. That thing can map the battle space in a way that most other aircraft can't. And then we've got helicopter teams that are going to be doing anti-submarine hunts. Think about those semi-submersibles that the cartels have been using. Maybe they'll be using those even more, seeing how many boat strikes there have been so far. But the supercarrier has been just pulled, basically pulled from this game, and they're putting in the VIP in this game over here, and it's headed to Southern Commands, also known as Southcoms. That's the overseeing command of the Caribbean. The military operations that are going on down there in Central and South America all fall under what's called Southcom, and that is a way to structure the forces so that everybody talks to each other and everybody knows who's in charge. But the why this is happening is obviously incredibly straightforward, because the Caribbean is now a priority zone. It's kind of how I would think about it, to stop the flow of drugs into the United States. So I kind of look at it like they've prepped the battlefield. They've greenlighted the CIA. They've talked about potential land strikes, and having that carrier strike group even closer now just provides so many more options. So not only the fixed wing air power and the rotary wing air power, but think about the Tomahawk cruise missile. That's one of the most advanced missiles. It did strikes in Iran, basically took down Isfahan. That was that massive nuclear refinement facility that wasn't buried as deep as some of the other structures. So think about the cartel compounds. Likely they're not going to be as buried deep as what we saw in Iran. So the Tomahawk cruise missiles that are going to come with this strike package are going to be insane, and now they're flowing into Southcom as we speak. Because this deployment, to me, it really adds overwhelming naval air power to what is already an active theater. I mean, there's already so much going on. It's almost like the Caribbean can't really fit more power, but now it can with the supercarrier rolling in. And likely what the supercarrier will do once it gets there is it will start to link up with other naval and marine forces that are already in the area. So likely they'll link up somewhere around Puerto Rico, somewhere off the shores of Puerto Rico. They'll link up and basically become the lead in this mission against the cartels. And this move isn't random, it's a direct response. I mean, think about Tren de Aragua, basically one of Venezuela's most deadly transnational criminal organizations, now dedicated as narco-terrorists. They funnel fentanyl, they funnel arms, and they're tied straight into Maduro's regime. And they're just kind of doing it, without any impunity. So they think they can get away with this, but obviously, as we've seen with these strikes on the boats, things have changed, and now the supercarrier is really putting the nail in the coffin for any hopes that Maduro had of flying under the radar and continuing to collect from the cartel organizations in his country. But let's pop the hood now on the platform. So to me, the Ford, it really stands out for a few different reasons, but it's got electromagnetic catapults, are also called EMALs, and those are electromagnetic aircraft launch systems, and that's tech that uses linear motors, so not the old technology that's been used before, but actually a more efficient way to blast jets off of that supercarrier. They launch aircraft smoother, faster than all the old legacy systems. So you could basically get, dozens of aircraft airborne per day, depending on what the mission may be. And when you looked at what the mission was with the US Navy against the Houthi rebels, launching dozens of aircraft, F-18s that are refuelers, and then also E-2 Hawkeyes that basically become the eyes in the sky. And that's going to team up also with the MQ-4. The MQ-4 is a beast, and this thing is owned by the Navy, and they also have the ability to team it up with the Marines, to team it up with the Air Force. The Air Force obviously has that system as well. But to me, this might be more of a naval battle. I mean, the Marines and the Navy are uniquely suited to hunt these different threats in an amphibious environment and on the open seas. So teaming up the E-2 Hawkeye with the MQ-4 from the Navy, and then teaming it up with MQ-9s that are in the Marines, the Navy, pretty much everybody's got one. Even grandma's got these at this point. But the ship itself, the Ford, is designed to support up to 90 aircraft, and the sortie rates flown per day are varied depending on what the mission might be. But likely they could get 50% or more of those jets off the deck every single day, and then they can sustain it. That's the big thing. The sustainability of the Ford means they could launch air assets without pause, essentially 24/7 around the clock. And then maybe you fill a few gaps with some of the Marine assets with the F-35B in the area, those things doing STOVL operations, that short takeoff vertical landing, and now you've really got options. And the Ford itself, besides just launching aircraft, this thing's literally a mobile military city powerhouse, and this thing can launch pretty much anything you can think of. But one of the things I want to highlight is the fact that there could be stealthy drones blasting off of this thing. So think the Anduril Fury, think the X-Bat, other assets that don't have to have a pilot in the jet, but that can sync up with the FA-18s, they can sync up with the F-35s, and now you've got not only the ability to project this force, but you've got a massive test bed to actually use these CCAs in a combat situation, and now all bets are off. This is just an extremely rare opportunity for all these assets to sync together. Whether or not they end up doing Venezuelan land strikes, I mean, it's definitely a possibility. You put a strike package together with the F-18s, the F-35s, all the different assets in the area, and Maduro really has no option at this point but to just throw his hands up and say, all right, I guess I'm going to conform to not supporting narco-terrorists, but we'll see if that happens, because he's definitely putting up a little bit of a fight. But here's something that's going to combine that Ford into the entire strike group for the Navy, and that's going to be the Aegis combat system. And one of the big things I think of for this in this situation itself would be missile defense. So let's say Russia or China sneaks in some sort of really wily missile, something like an S-300, S-400. There's even more advanced missiles than that. But if they sneak in something like that, you're really going to want to have the ability to protect the carrier strike group against that weapon. And the best way to do that is the Aegis combat system. That thing is like, I would say, the maestro in the sky. That thing just basically reaches out and touches things. Oh, I don't want this missile to hit the carrier strike group. No problem. Aegis system, engage, take down that missile. No big deal. And that's how that thing works. It syncs up, and it actually syncs up with the air assets as well. And it gives the air assets more of an ability to understand what they're blasting off and launching into. Because, I mean, think about it. You're launching off of a carrier. It's the dead of night. It'd be nice to have some SA, some situational awareness on what's going on around you, what you're going to find basically minute 2 of blasting off the carrier. And that Aegis combat system links up with the different radars. Those radar operators can communicate directly with the strike fighters, and now you're really in a position to survive and to kill, to take down the enemy in ways that we really haven't seen before. And there's also other assets that can team up with the Ford. Think about the Winston Churchill, the USS Bainbridge. Each one of those has 96 vertical launch cells. When 10 or 20 won't do the job, how about 96? Yeah, we'll take 96 instead of 10. But those things are called VLSs, vertical launch systems, and they're loaded for cruise missiles. So again, we're coming full circle back to the idea that these cruise missiles could be the biggest thing against these cartel compounds, because you're basically not risking any fixed wing assets, and with the idea that there could be up to 1,500 man pads. That's a man portable SAM system, surface to air missile system. So if you don't want to go up against those with a manned asset or a very expensive unmanned asset, then you just really focus and you double down on those cruise missiles actually going there and doing work. That's probably one of the biggest advantages of having a carrier strike group, a massive carrier strike group, the most advanced in the US Navy in the Caribbean. This is a big statement, and it sends a very clear message, but also anti-submarine work. So teaming up all the different boats, the ability of those to seek, search, and destroy this anti-sub network is essentially second to none. Think about a Virginia-class sub also joining in on the fun. So those are nuclear-powered attack submarines, and they're built, just their bread and butter is stealthy underwater operations. They're essentially the shadow underneath the sea. Oh, is that the shadow of the Ford? No, that's just our Virginia-class nuclear submarine. Don't worry about that, little guy. So likely these subs are going to converge in the Caribbean, potentially. That hasn't been confirmed yet, but if I was a betting man, I would say that those subs are going to be out there helping to protect and bolster the carrier strike group, potentially up to 6 or 12 of these submarines, potentially 10,000 personnel total now converging in the Caribbean with this new carrier strike group rolling in. There's going to be support bases that are close by. So you got Puerto Rico, you've also got bases in Florida, southern Texas. You've got the ability to really project force, to refuel, to rearm, and to keep this thing going until the strategic objectives are achieved. And then if you saw my video yesterday, we had the B-1s that basically shadowed the Venezuelan coast. So again, heavy hitters, and you team that up with the carrier strike group. Now you've got the ability for the Aegis system to sync up with B-1s. Now you've got this massive amount of firepower. 75,000 pounds of JDAMs can be loaded on the B-1. So think about this, that carrier strike group using the cruise missiles, using their assets, their fixed wing assets to take down any SAMs and just clearing the way for the B-1s. And they could basically sit there, pepper all the different targets along the coast, keep those from being any factor to B-52s and B-1s, and now you've just got a recipe for success. Again, the carrier strike group just provides so many options, not to mention the idea of escorting the B-52s, escorting the B-1s, in case some of those wily F-16s from the Venezuelan regime happen to, take a shot of tequila and get themselves airborne going up against F-35s. It's not going to be a pretty day. So what's kind of the overall strategic perspective of all this, and why do you care? Let's talk about that. So basically one of the bigger things is to build detection, because with this carrier strike group in the area, detection is going to go to an entirely new level. Not that it wasn't high before, but now essentially nothing is going to slip through this net. And when you think of a carrier strike group, there's different nets. So the outer net, that'd be something like the Aegis system, looking out, using radars, scanning, SM-2 missiles for the defense, so striking anything trying to come in and hit that carrier strike group. So think about the drones. I mean, the cartels have been practicing with drones for years, since they sent people over to Ukraine to train at the drone academies. Just wild. So you've got that going on, and that outer net can basically schwack anything coming in. Not to mention if you have CAPs, combat air patrols of the F-18s that are out there just being the big swinging, you know what? You know I love that line. But those F-18s would obviously be the eyes in the sky for the carrier strike group, making sure that nothing hits mother, just another term for the Ford. So if anything is inbound towards the Ford, now you've got that outer net to really strike and really schwack and protect. And the middle net would likely be something more like the SM-2 missiles, even though those could be used on the outer net as well, but something basically mid-range coming in to hit the carrier. And then you'd have potentially even strike helicopters that could get airborne, take down drones, take down any fast boats, anything trying to get through and pierce through, even semi-submersibles. So if you have attack helicopters like the Viper, man, that Viper helicopter, something about it, I just want to fly it. Anybody else out there want to fly this thing? But that thing can be loaded to the teeth with its cannon, with Hellfire missiles. You can do airburst Hellfire missiles. You could do regular Hellfire missiles that just explode once they hit the target, and you've got the ability to protect that internet. And then when it comes to the actual ships themselves, there's going to be specific defense systems. Think about some sort of laser-directed energy weapon. Think about the Sea Whiz, that gun that can basically take down any threats, and it's a radar-operated gun. So the gun can lock onto things with a radar, hone in, shoot, pull lead, take down drones, take down fast boats, just so many options out there. And that would be the internet. That would be what would be going on in the in game. So obviously you don't want to rely on those guns, even though they're just incredibly fun to watch. Can we just let one come through that we know is not going to be a real threat to the carrier, and just watch this gun just turn it into a cheese grater? So let's talk about the air wing on the Ford. So the CVW-8, it's got 9 squadrons, and each of those squadrons are tuned for specific roles that could directly target Venezuelan-linked threats. But first, the backbone. To me, that would be the strike fighters, and those are the VFA-37 Raging Bulls, the VFA-213 Black Lions, VFA-31 Tomcatters, and VFA-87 Golden Warriors. All of those fly the F-18 variant, the F-18E or the F-18F. Those are Super Hornets. They're 4th generation multi-role fighters. I've gotten the chance to fly in a Super Hornet, albeit in the back seat. I wish they would have just let me into the front seat. But these are very capable strike fighter jets. Super Hornets, the ability of these things to reach out and touch the enemy is second to none for a beyond visual range scenario, but then even a within visual range scenario, schwacking targets close in, AIM-9Xs, advanced avionics inside those Super Hornets, just second to none, and they're workhorses. So being so close to the US in that area, think about tanker support. Tanker support's gonna be super easy, and you've got these workhorses that can get up to Mach 1.8. So let's say there's some sort of a naval asset being targeted 100 miles away. These things are gonna be on top of it, ready to strike, ready to target, ready to defend in a moment's notice. They could get up to Mach 1.8, do what they need to do, take down the enemy target, and then pop to an aerial refueler somewhere near Florida relatively easily, or even in the Gulf of America. We are calling it the Gulf of America now, right? I'm pretty sure Venezuela is like gritting their teeth and they're like, I guess this is the Gulf of America now. But those Super Hornets have a range of over 1,000 nautical miles, and they can do that 1,000 miles without refueling. So in a Venezuela scenario, they'd launch from the forward for precision strikes, likely on coastal smuggling hubs. So those hubs are going to be above ground, relatively unhardened targets. They're going to be very tuned and very dialed in as they approach these targets, just based on the fact of the SAMs and the man pads in the area. But these smuggling hubs, inland cartel warehouses, they're going to use JDAMs, Joint Direct Attack Munitions. Those are GPS guided bombs, and they're accurate within feet. You could also load these things out with AGM-88 HARM missiles. Those are anti-radiation missiles, and that'd be great for knocking out any enemy radars. There's been some advanced radars that have rolled into Venezuela thanks to China. Fentanyl and radars. That must be China's two biggest exports to Venezuela at this point. But the APG-79 radar, that's on the Hornet as well. It's an electronically scanned, or an ASA. That thing is just super capable. Flying with an ASA, there's nothing like it. It basically makes the whole battle space just completely viewable to you. You can track multiple targets simultaneously, and then you can fuse those sensors on the Hornet for long range, beyond visual range shots, and that's just going to be the bread and butter, the name of the game. But those things can also fly incredibly low. So they can go very fast, they can fly incredibly low. They've got high fidelity pods on them that can basically spot exactly what you're seeing. So determining what kind of boat is going from Venezuela to the US. At this point, likely there's not too many boats doing that. So if someone's doing that and they haven't gotten the message so far, they're going to tune in and dial in what's called ISR, Intelligence, Surveillance, and Reconnaissance. And that could be done off of the F-18. Like I said, the systems on that thing are incredible, high fidelity, basically seeing license plates from way far away. And then you mix in the MQ-4 or the MQ-9, and you've really just got the ability to know exactly what target you're going up against. And what they'll be doing is what's called PID, Positive Identification of Friend or Foe. This is exactly what we did in Afghanistan. We had multiple ways to understand exactly who we were going up against, and the technology is just second to none. You pair those F-35Cs with Marine F-35Bs, and now you can launch the F-35Bs from nearby amphibious ships like the USS America. That's an amphibious assault ship with a massive flight deck, and those Bs are STOVL capable, so short takeoff, vertical landing specialists. So they could even be a little closer in, pop up when needed, and then again, sharing data. So that's really what it comes down to in a massive military operation like this. And the MADL does that incredibly well. It's an acronym that I know you're gonna love, the Multifunction Advanced Data Link. Think of Link 16, but even more advanced. Basically allows the jets to talk to each other real time. I'm pretty sure they can even send each other text messages, and at the end of the day, they're gonna be texting, hey, I'll take this bandit, you take that bandit. But really when it comes to the Ford, why send the Ford? Why do you need the Ford when you've already got so many assets there? Well, to me, it's the fourth gen monsters like the Super Hornet. They're really the muscle here. So the F-35 can open the door, and then the Hornets will flood in for volume, and they could just pepper, completely dominate different targets along the coast, different targets of the Venezuelan regime, and they could just continue to do it day in and day out because they're the workhorse, they're the backbone. They've got the ability to sustain operations in ways that some of the other aircraft might not. So this redeployment, to me, it underscores the massive focus that we're going to see now for the coming months in the Caribbean. But now the Caribbean just got a super boost from a Supercarrier. So what do you think? What do you think the Ford is going to bring to the fight in the Caribbean? Let me know in the comments below. Would love to hear your perspective on this. And then as always, if you guys would, if you'd support the channel, I would greatly appreciate it. And all you have to do is just watch this video right here. When you watch this video right here, it helps the channel grow, and I would greatly appreciate it. So I'll see you on this video right here. This is Ryan, also known as Max Afterburner, signing off.